Just a few seconds before we can, yes. Thank you so much for your patience. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is our third session of the course, Tools for Post-Conflict Urban Recovery Ukraine, organized by TU Delft in collaboration with UN, the Ukraine, the Netherlands Urban Network, the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology in Australia, and Delft University here in the Netherlands, and our Ukrainian partners. My name is Roberto Rocco. I'm an associate professor of spatial planning and strategy at the Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands, and my work and research focuses on the governance of just sustainability transitions, more specifically on spatial justice as a framework for policy design and implementation. Together with my colleague Caroline Newton, we are facilitators of this course. This course, as you know, will seek to discuss spatial strategies for an integrated urban recovery in post-conflict settings, investigating the process of reconstruction and what the notion of building back better implies, tackling inequalities, strengthening the capacities of local actors, and pursuing a green, resilient, and inclusive urban recovery anchored on sound spatial planning, design, and policy. The course focuses on practical tools of spatial planning and strategy making, land policy, building and planning standards for climate adaptation and circularity, policies and programs for ensuring the development of adequate rehousing, as well as mechanisms to ensure fairness, participation, and transparency throughout the urban recovery and reconstruction phase. It's important to point out that in the development phase of this course, we wanted to use the term post-conflict as an open term that allows us to converse with colleagues not only from Ukraine, but also from other areas affected by conflict and violent shocks. However, it's important to acknowledge that language has been used as a tool for disinformation and the erosion of public debate, and we want to fully acknowledge that what is going on in Ukraine at the moment is a full, senseless, and tragic war perpetrated by a madman on a fully sovereign state. While the war is not yet over, we want to salute our friends and colleagues from Ukraine who bravely bear the brunt of this war and whom we wish to wholeheartedly support. All instructors in this course are working voluntarily as a service to the reconstruction of Ukraine and in support of our Ukrainian friends and colleagues. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce our two speakers of today, our two contributors of today, Dr. Alex Wandl, Associate Professor at the Chair of Environmental Technology and Design at TU Delft. His research focuses on sustainable urbanization using an extended territorial metabolism approach and integrating GIS-supported methods and tools from different disciplines. As scientific coordinator of the Horizon 2020 research project RePair, Resource Management in Peri-Urban Areas, he is at the forefront of developing spatial strategies that support the transition towards more circularity. He specifically focused on the challenges related to the sustainable development of dispersed urban areas and peri-urbanization processes in Europe. He is joined today by Roman Puchko, who is a co-founder and CEO of ReThink, a circular economy and green innovation NGO based in Kyiv, Ukraine. ReThink is known for its dedication to recycling and circular design, free water refill in Kyiv, circular economy hackathons organizer, drivers for circularity in built environment. Roman holds a master's degree from Wageningen University in Management, Economics, and Consumer Studies, and has completed a course on circular cities at the University of Amsterdam. He has also been a member of Innovators Development Council under the Prime Minister of Ukraine. I know there will be questions during the seminar. Please feel free to ask your questions in the chat. We will do our utmost best to answer them. It's not always possible, I have to say, because of a lack of time, but we will try. And without further ado, Alex and Roman, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Roberto, for the introduction. And I'm really happy that I can join this course and dedicate my knowledge to it. So I'll try to share my screen, which should work. Just also trying to get this one out here. Okay.
It works.
It works. Perfect. Thank you. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm going to talk, as Roberto said, about the circularity of the built environment, apologies, from a systemic perspective. As Roberto already introduced me, I will keep this. Sorry, I still have to have some. Okay, now I have had some Zoom messages over my screen. Roberto already introduced me briefly. Just a little bit about my background. I'm an urbanist and a landscape ecologist from my education. I am also the head of the section of environmental technology and design here at the Department of Urbanism in Delft. And I'm the steering member of the Circular Built Environment Hub of our faculty. I will come back to those things a little bit later in my presentation, because as you see, I'm not an architect, but my expertise on circularity and circular built environment is from the neighborhood upscale, I would say. The keywords that describe my research is multiple and interrelated sustainability transitions. Because circularity, or the transition towards circularity, can of course only be seen in the other challenges that we are facing, like climate change, the loss of biodiversity, and so forth. I look at things through the lens of territorial metabolism and systemic design, and I teach whenever possible in situated learning environments, meaning bringing students and stakeholders in real world environments together to solve real world problems. Just adding to my background, as I said, the section of environmental technology and design focuses on 3 aspects: urban climate, people behavior, and territorial metabolism, and how they come together. And today we'll focus primarily on aspects of the urban metabolism, or the territorial metabolism part, where we work from the territorial scale. Here you see an image of the flows of the construction and demolition sector from Amsterdam through the Netherlands and beyond, but also include very small scale projects like a lab or a test, a pilot that retrieves phosphorus and other nutrients from toilets at festivals and so forth. So we are trying always to work through scale and focusing on a systemic change. Good. Quick of what to expect today. A quick intro into circularity or circular economy. I'll tell you brief why I tend to talk about circularity and not circular economy later on. Then we're talking about what's the circular built environment, and circularity and spatial co-design is then the final thing that I'm gonna talk about. I will use some Mentimeter interaction. I hope that works. And we'll see it from here. Because the first thing is, as I can't see or talk to you, I would be really, really interested. Who are these 178 people that are listening? So I would kindly ask you, go to menti.com, type in the code, or use the QR code to answer where you're from, country, city, and your profession, so that I can get a bit of a feeling for the audience. Okay, I'll give you a minute or two. Okay. While you're still going on, I'll still wait a minute. But I can already see that, of course, Ukraine, the country, and Kiev, the city where most people come from, and that architects, urban planners, architecture students are the most professional, which is not a big surprise, but still, there are also project managers among us. Let me see, jumps, PhD candidates, and people come from Jakarta, Mexico City, so all over the planet as well. So thank you for that. I think everybody more or less. No, still busy.
Alex,
Good.
while
Yep.
people are answering, may I just ask people who have their hands raised, if you could please ask your questions in the Q&A. That makes our lives a little bit better. Otherwise, we have to stop to answer your particular question, which is fine, but it may be easier if you.
And I will stop in the lecture from time to time. Every let's say a third of I'll have a slide where I say questions, and then I will see or ask Roberto to tell me what's written in the chat. And for question. Okay, I think we can go. So that's thanks very much. Now I get a much better overview. I'm still busy of what is going on. In a second, I will switch to the next question. And that is, what are your associations with circular economy? I would be curious if you think about circular economy, what comes to your mind? See a lot of I don't know. That's good. But we see, of course, also in the middle sustainability, which I think is for sure on the core of the idea of circular economy, but not necessarily. So I think we can maybe an interesting discussion that you could have a circular economy that is not sustainable in its whole meaning. And I see also recycle a lot, reuse a lot, in sense of, and that's good, but I see also very specific things like life cycle assessment and planetary boundaries of metabolism, reducing waste, recycling, reuse, sustainability. Okay, thank you. I think that's good. That gives me a good starting point, and we will look at the similar exercise at the end. And I hope sincerely that recycling and waste and reuse will be left at the end. But let's see after my lecture, because then I achieved what I wanted to achieve. So let me give you a very quick recap of the key concept of circularity or circular economy. There is not one definition. There is a famous paper by Kircher who reviewed 160 different definitions. So it's a very vaguely defined concept. But what all of them have more or less in common is something that's depicted here on the slide, which is on the right side, the well-known butterfly diagram of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, where you see two sides, the technical loop and the biological loop, and strategies to keep material as long as possible in loops in our economy, from material supplier to the user. Repair, reuse, refurbish, and recycle on the technical loop, and cascade and return to the biosphere on the biological loop. Important, the closer we stay, desto better and desto higher the values are retained in the value chains. There's additional, next to the diagram comes the resolve framework that gives a bit more of ideas what to do. So from virtualize, meaning dematerializing things, to loop, it's all kind of forms of cycling, to optimize using better with less materials and support, to share, which means, well, I think self-explanatory, to regenerate, which includes also shift to renewable energy and materials and so forth. This is the two put next to each other, where we see how we can reuse, recycle, and so forth, and cascade and use goods longer in the value chain. But what is really important is that the idea is to not have the two separated, the two cycles, but actually also replace the non-renewable by renewable resources, primary resources. One of the key prime examples is using bio-based building materials like timber for construction or wool for insulation and so forth. Another concept that you very often will have come across or will come across is the so-called R ladder, the R strategy, that has 10 strategies from recycle to repurpose, remanufacture, refurbish, repair, reuse, reduce, rethink, and refuse. And also here the idea is the higher you're up on the ladder, the better. And you see already that recycling is actually on the bottom. So, and recover as well. So recover and recycling are on the bottom. And you, like in practice many, always also include recycling as a key strategy in circularity and strategies, where I would argue and will argue in the next slides that this is actually only a reuse economy and not a circular economy. And I'll tell you why, because there's actually not enough waste in our economy so that recycling would be a strategy that is really enough for us. Because if you look at this Sankey diagram, shows you the flows of materials for 1 year of the European Union. So it's the imports and the natural resources extracted, direct materials, processed materials, and how they end up. And only a tiny part actually ends up as waste in waste treatment and waste refill. And of this part that goes into, that becomes waste, actually quite something, nearly half, a bit less than half, is recycled and put back. But the direct material import every year is much, much bigger. So this is where we actually need to start. It's about less material used for what we need to live. The other one is a lot of the materials goes actually into material accumulation. So this are the buildings, the material, the tools, the materials that we use, our phones, and so forth. Meaning, also here, the longer we can use them, the better. So it's also not recycling, but it's longer. And the other one is the total emissions, which is a big part. This is actually everything that we kind of burn that goes to emissions into air. So that's all the fuels and so forth. Meaning also there, a shift towards bio-based or towards renewable is crucial. So that's just to give you a little bit of an evidence. Whenever somebody tells you circularity starts with no waste, then you should start thinking, not sure. Perhaps that's an end of pipe way of thinking. Let's start thinking from the beginning and apply a systemic approach to it. So let me now bring this a little bit closer to, as I saw most of your architects, to designing. As I said, the reuse economy, and I will show you this three types of economy according to principles, circularity strategies, and design strategies, so that we get there. The lowest level is closing loops, so meaning increasing the recirculation of materials. It's classic recover and recycle. This is designing for biodegrading and recycling, and designing for disassembly only. I would call that still a waste-focused or a reuse economy. Only if we come higher, the principle level, if we talk about slowing loops, meaning extending the utilization of products, buildings, or decrease use of materials and energy, so narrowing the loops, then we are actually speaking of a circular economy. Have in mind the diagram I showed you beforehand, because that's very big, where we keep materials longer and with higher value in our system. You see next to it the art, and then next to it the design strategies, which go from design for this and reassembly. And that's very important, because design for disassembly is actually only one type. Design for upgrades and adjustments, design for ease of maintenance and repair, design for standardization or compatibility, design for reliability and durability is important, and design for attachment and trust is crucial. And if we're talking about narrowing loops, then it's design for material reduction and design for energy reduction. So it's meaning less, using less. And I would argue that on top of that is actually the regenerative economy. Then we're talking about restore, renew, and revitalize. It's about revitalizing ecosystem, shifting towards renewable energy, and regenerating water and soil systems, and acknowledge them as the basis of all what we are doing. And also here is, I would really urge you, whenever you can, start from the top, and only if there is no way further, rely back on the strategies of the reuse economy. Good. I would see, Roberto, are there questions so far?
There is one question, and I think people, if they want, they can write their questions in the Q&A. But Ishita Singh asks, what do you mean by energy recovery after incineration?
Yes. Yeah, I see it now. Thank you. Ishita, very simple. This means that if waste is burnt in incineration, then it's coupled with producing electricity and heat. That is, I hope that answers. So you're not only burning waste in incinerators, but you at the same time produce with a turbine electricity that can be used, and heat that can also be used for heating of neighborhoods. Many modern waste incinerating companies have this. Okay, good. Then let me go on. So how are we doing with the circular transition? Because if you're looking at policy documents or even in the newspapers, then very often you think, well, we're all busy with it, we're all doing great, it's all going the right direction. But unfortunately, we are not really doing so. On the global scale, we are actually becoming less circular over the last years, so between 2019 and 2021. If you want to have a closer look, I recommend you to have a look at the Circularity Gap reports of Circular Economy, Amsterdam-based NGO actually, that's making these reports, and also because Netherlands is very often considered and named as a front runner, which is in circularity transition, which is true. So the Netherlands is, depending on how you count it, somewhere between 20 and 30% circular. But we're also not getting further than that. So we have put our goals to have half of abiotic raw material use in 2030. And zero in 2050. And the recent report from the National Environmental Planning Agency states that we are not getting there. So it's not an easy target. It's not an easy target, and it requires collaboration, policies, and an integrated approach. Good. So what now has circular economy actually to do with our field of expertise, or with the field of expertise that most of you come from, the built environment? Well, this is actually quite simple. If you look where the resources end up with, the images the images have the size of the share. So around 50% of all the resources that are mined in a year go into housing and infrastructure. Another 25 into production of food, another 12 into the mobility systems, and then on the consumable services, healthcare, and communication. So if we are being very limited in understanding our profession, then we're ending up at that 60% of materials our profession has actually the hands in, and this is kind of a two-sided medal. Because on the one hand, it means we are part of the problem, because we are a core part of the linear economy, and we have to look at ourselves and think, okay, the way how we built and how we planned and designed is probably not how we should go on. But the other one is actually we are actually also in the midst and can make an impact and can change, and I think that's important. Both, it's important to realize both. This becomes even more important when you look at images like this. Apologies, most text is in Dutch, but I've put you the key words in English on top of this. So this is how this is from the National Program Circular Economy in the Netherlands. And it states that actually ideas of circularity or circular economy are important for tackling climate change, dealing with a healthier environment, regenerating biodiversity, and secure access to resources. And all this asks for space, because these users need to land somewhere. So it's about how can we deal with this additional pressure on space when thinking about the transition towards a circular economy. And how this circular built environment looks like may be very different. And there is it's open to kind of our ideas, our imaginations, and so forth. I just brought you here two images from different student groups that were thinking about this horizon of 2040, and you see how different they are. But what is, I think, one of our key tasks as designers is that we have the capability to visualize and think about future and future spaces and our future living environment. And our task is, in times of uncertainty, is to design futures that people can aspire to together with them. And that's, I think, really important and also fantastic. And that's what I like very much about our job. Good, which means we transitioned now from circular economy to a circular built environment. And at our faculty, we're having around 70 people that are working together at the Circular Built Environment Hub. And after a year-long intensive discussions and process, we came to this draft definition of what for us the circular built environment is. And the circular built environment is a system designed for narrowing, slowing, and closing resource loops at different spatial temporal levels by transitioning cultural, environmental, economic, and social values towards a sustainable way of living, thus enabling society to live within the planetary boundaries. So to be very clear, it's not only about making circular buildings. It's also a discussion about values, or it's primarily a discussion about values, I would say. And that is something that we need to engage with. The diagram shows how we look through scale and with tools and aspects that cross scales as well. Good. Sorry. Now the question is, how can actually the built environment facilitate the transition towards circularity?
Alex, maybe there is a
questions. Good.
There's just one question about how can we reuse debris of concrete structures collapsed?
Yeah, that's a very good question. How can we use debris of concrete structure collapsed by ocean terrorists? I expected a question like this, but I cannot give you in a very clear and specific answer, and that is simply because I am neither an engineer nor an architect, as I've told you. So I would need to get you in contact with colleagues of the Circular Built Environment Hub to answer these questions more specific. And I think, if I'm not completely wrong, Roberto, there is another session on circularity that is more on the architectural scale in the lecture series, right?
Yes, there is. Yes. Yeah. I don't know if you want to address the questions now, Alex.
I can.
Yeah. What should be the steps of Ukraine in building the system of demolition waste application in reconstruction?
Sorry that I'm laughing because these are so big questions. Okay, let me see. What should be the steps of Ukraine in building the system with application? So I think, and that may sound now a bit counterintuitive, to look at to start it with the demolition waste. To start with the demolition, with the lens on the demolition waste. Although, of course, that is the one that is of course the apparent one. But the chance is, no, let me reformulate it. The idea is to have an understanding of what the reconstruction can do more than only quickly reproducing housing, although that is very important, and this is the first priority. But that means, and I hope that Roman can tell a little bit more because he's much more familiar with the situation, that also means to dare to have space for adaptation in the reconstruction, to dare to allow to redo things if they didn't deliver the results that we expected at the beginning. And then I go to the next question, if that's fine. Doesn't creating gigantic greenhouses and situ captures rise to new ecosystems by changing the local geography? Yes, absolutely. And I showed you these two examples because it's a discussion about values, about the futures we are wanting. We want, and it's not an individual decision. And indeed, we have to understand whether an ecotech approach is really bringing us further, or if it needs a combination of technophilic and biophilic interventions, which I would assume will be the best. But the important is that we don't assume there is one single way to deal with it. Okay. I hope that answered the questions. Let me get now I want you to, and I hope that helps also to discuss the question a bit. Give you 4 integral starting points where we can start thinking about the transition to a circular environment. The one is the physically built environment. So that's all that is really built out of materials. The others is the flows in the cities in the region. The third one is how we can support circular behavior of citizens. And the fourth one is how other economic activities that go beyond the building sector can become more circular, or circular at all. I will relate it with somehow perhaps unexpected scarcities. So talking about critical raw materials, that may be the most expected one, but also about knowledge and collaboration. And I will try to show you some interdisciplinary student projects to give you an idea how that could be. Let me start with the physical built and unbuilt environment. That's all about buildings, mobility infrastructure, water infrastructure, energy facilities, and public spaces. The design strategies is shifting towards renewable and bio-based materials, regenerating water and soil system, designed for material reductions, designed for emotional bonding and trust, designed for reliability, designed for resilience and redundancy, and then the ones that we named beforehand that come there. And perhaps that's where I come back to the question beforehand, that the design for resilience and redundancy is perhaps something that is very important. So in the reconstruction phase, thinking about how can certain infrastructures, for example, be rebuilt and be redundant through scales, be it from energy, water, and so forth, which actually fits a bit better in the next point. I show you a student project as an example, and here is the Solar Decathlon contribution of 1 year ago from the Delft students. And what you see on the right side is a kind of a top-up structure that has solar or PV panels in its facade and roof, and uses quite some bio-based materials in facades, insulation, interior, and so forth. And the interesting part of this design is that it actually fits or enhances a typology of buildings, which is very, very common in the Netherlands in the 50s, 60s, also part of post-war and later reconstruction areas, and by adding this on top of existing structures, it's actually making also those existing buildings able to be to have renewable energy, for example. And what is actually also a nice or a very important part of it, of the whole transformations, it also includes the public spaces. So it opens up the public spaces in these areas where very often predominantly parking spaces and didn't have liveliness. And with including the water management on that scale, opening soils, introducing green, diversifying spaces, these estates become not only more sustainable in the sense of energy, but also in sense of water, soil, and also quality of life. Let me see. Just a bit of geopolitics as well. Always to these aspects. Actually, bio-based materials is one where Europe is rather self-sufficient comparing to other parts of our planet. But nevertheless, we see already with huge shifts towards bio-based building, also the price of timber, for example, is fluctuating extremely. So the question of having bio-based materials in your region is something that is crucial. And also a little bit of warning in relation to overboarding claims of sustainability of bio-based materials. There is no sustainable bio-based material if we don't have sustainable forestry and sustainable agriculture. Because we see that already now that even Canadian forests, but also the European forests are losing their carbon sink capacities because of several reasons. Among others, the rise of temperature and more wildfires, but also because of the much more extraction of timber. Do we have questions? No, at the moment, not. Good. Then I would go to flows, and with flows we understand the production, transport, and storage and use of them, of water, food, data and information, energy, electricity, fuels, heat, traffic, people, goods, animals, waste, and also thinking about new forms of mining. And I was long thinking about what I should show you here as an example. And I showed you here a bit more of a speculative study that looks at the Netherlands with what if the climate and the sea level rise scenarios really come out in a rather worst scenario, which would mean 3 meter sea level rise in the Netherlands. And then if you do this study, we realize that actually a big part of the west of the Netherlands will be underwater. So just to orient yourself, this is Rotterdam areas, here's Delft, and big parts of the Netherlands is under the sea level, up to six meters under the sea level of reclaimed land. And with 3 meters of sea level rise, it's of course not very feasible to keep that land. And then the question is, how can we transform our built environment and our economy to one that can deal with this new extreme situation? And what is one way of thinking is that we need also to rethink our agriculture, the way we do agriculture. We have also do much more aquaculture. There's a completely different, urban structure related, a different way of how we deal with water, electricity, and flows. And also what is interesting, and that is perhaps also feeds into the question on the debris. We need to understand what is actually the material that is available and how can we reuse this material in different forms and in different means. And therefore it needs kind of understanding what is there, what is our time capacity, and what we want to build or rebuild. And then, of course, meaning that the transition towards circularity is a systemic change, which results in different built environments. Also here, a little bit of geopolitical comment, because a lot of this rebuilding and needs specifically the shift towards renewable energy needs critical raw materials, and they are very unevenly distributed about the planet. But, and that's something that's important to know, we are also particularly bad in retrieving them, also specifically from flows. So we are literally throwing away a lot of crucial materials and nutrients that actually we should try to keep in our systems. Because the question is, of course, the shift towards renewable energy is unavoidable, but where will we place them? There are ideas of combining it with agriculture, and in this sense also counteracting the effect of climate change, because it also cools and so forth. But there is, I would say, there needs a lot of more thoughts to go into. And what is specifically important is to understand that when we shift towards renewable energies, which is crucial, we also shift the materials we use to more rare ones. So only building renewable energy production without reducing our energy consumption will not really help us. I skipped the next two, I think, that just going a little bit more into detail. And I see there's a question. Oh no, it's gone. Are there any other questions?
Please. Oh yeah, can you see it, Alex?
Yeah, how can we bring it to heavy industry and the mining field of Donbass? Yeah, counting the better yeah, that's a good question. How can we restrict to the heavy industries and the mining field of Donbass to do such a shift? Counting on the point, the coal mining produces a lot of CO2 emissions. Shift to the sky. Yeah, that's a tough decision to make. To transition coal mining areas, because it's the question in how to reduce coal as use of primarily as of our primary fuel is one that we will have to face sooner. The important thing is that we try to achieve, or that we achieve to do this transition in a social way, social and ecological way, which means actually also including education for people to allow them to also change their jobs. This will be only possible, of course, for some people, and not for all. It will not be a solution. But the idea is to develop in similar regions new economies and other activities, so that to buffer the negative effect of the unavoidably closing of coal mines over the next decade. Good. Now, supporting citizens in their circular behavior. Now, becoming a bit to a smaller scale. there on the top, the design for emotional bonding and trust, for example, becomes very important, and the reliability and durability, and provide infrastructures for sharing tools, equipment, vehicles, spaces, and flows, but also facilitate collaborative production and consumption. And for the sharing economy, provide spaces for reuse and knowledge sharing, support regenerative practices, and very old-fashioned urban design principles like design for promoting walking and cycling. I brought you here the Circular Communities book from colleagues Leclerc and Smith, and also two examples of it, because also and specifically on the community and neighborhood scale, it becomes very important that the discussion is not only focused about efficiency of energy of the resources and materials, but it's a combination with the values that are there, with cultural, social, ecological, and economic, and aesthetic values, of course, because nobody wakes up in the morning and says, well, we need to live in a circular neighborhood. Now we want to live in a livable neighborhood. We want to have physical and economic security. We want to have basic services. We want to have kind of leadership and openness and tolerance and aesthetics that are beautiful, have culture and so forth. So just to make me very clear of understand in my message, circularity is not a principle or an aim at a goal in itself, but we should imply it in a way to achieve more sustainable, more livable neighborhoods and regions. That's very crucial. I see another question.
Alex, for the sake of the it's better if we read the question.
Okay, good. Then I'll go through and I'll come to questions later and then do them. Yeah. Did I understand you?
It's up to you.
Okay. I should read it. Okay. How can Ukraine's recovery plan leverage the principle of circular economy to drive economic development while ensuring inclusion and social equality for all segments of society? You're posing all very relevant questions, but also very big questions. The principles of circular. I think it's what I just showed you here. It's in the process focusing on both, on economic development and inclusion and society, social equity. So it's not focusing only on the one in the end, meaning to have co-creative processes, to include people, to have bottom-up initiatives and support them. This is the answer that I would give you at the moment in a little bit short. As examples, I show you two examples again in another very different. One about how to transform actually former industrial areas and how using elements and materials and the community that is there can actually start giving a neighborhood that was in the backyards and nobody had on its on his or on their mind an identity, because I think generating identity of places is a crucial one. And the other one that I show you, and I know that I'm a bit quick because of time, is actually that Schroonschip, which is a neighborhood of boats. But I took it because the interesting thing is that it combines affordable housing, social living environments, 100% renewable heating, and so forth. So it's actually an interesting approach of a decentralized circular neighborhood, if you so want. And whether this is like here now floating, or you think that in smaller scales in the reconstruction is in principle similar, because you're developing together infrastructures in a scale that they can be managed by the community, that allows also different speeds of development, different scales and redundancy and resilience of infrastructure, of energy, water, sewage, and so forth. I think that is something that is really crucial. And the last point is well, how to facilitate circular businesses that go beyond the building industry. And I think what is there important, or what is actually underlying there, is that many of our cities are actually functionally separated. And with circularity, functions like repairing, but also producing goods of daily need come actually back, or need to come back in our neighborhoods and in our cities. And this requires a spatial arrangement from the building block and city that manages transitions, and that include the negotiation of circularity and technology, search spaces, people networks, and different local, neighborhood, regional, and metropolitan structures. And I used here examples from the cities of Making project, because what is so interesting for them, or from them, is actually that they developed a co-creation instrument, a pattern language, that allows exactly what I answered beforehand to the questions, a co-creative process where not only the economic activities or the economic interests are on the table, but also others, also the social, the environmental, come on the table and can be included in the space negotiations, if you so want. I'll go that here. You can find more about this and also read it. And then I show you one example in a completely different system that's designed in the Greater Bay Area, China, where and in the peri-urban areas there, where the current linear economy, globalized economy, so it's the workbench. It was for a long time the workbench of a globalized linear economy, led to extreme pollution of water, soil, and industries that are now not coping anymore, and also also living conditions that are far from healthy and livable. And so that's the situation, how it's now, how it's looking now, and the student proposed a combination of the regeneration of the green and blue networks, a symbiotic industrial network of eco-industry parks, and identification of just metropolitan public and living environments to achieve a diverse decentralized structure with shared green-blue networks. And I found this very interesting, specifically in the Chinese context, because in the peri-urban areas, the land is actually owned by the communities, and that allows a different way of collaborating, which normally the planning system won't allow. Well, that's then the systemic section of how the flows can be used in the region. So how a bio-based economy can function, can provide new forms of jobs, new public spaces, a regeneration of water, soil, and at the same time also achieve more livable urban areas, or in this case, peri-urban areas. Not going to go in detail here. And I just want to end with this, because I hope I emphasized this enough, that the circular development really relies on co-creation, because we only can build it together. And Roberto shared with you free videos on the guide to how, a little bit more from a methodological point of view. And I think for the sake of time, I'll leave it with here. I would have another question, a last one, and then from you. So what are your associations with circular economy now? Did they change? Could you be so kind and fill this in one more time? And I will, in the meantime, read the questions. Okay, that's I don't see new here. Q&A, what's there? Okay, the first one is by Julia. What is the optimal size for circular neighborhoods? Many Ukrainians live in mass housing districts where it's hard to define the borders. They are extremely broad. That is a good question, and there is no optimal size for circularity, because it depends on which aspects you're looking for. For example, if looking from a technical point of view, if we're saying, okay, parts of water management and or energy production should be produced and directly and decentralized, organized in neighborhoods, then the relation of build mass, population, available open spaces, participation, potential of wind and solar, and so forth, define those. So there is not, I cannot tell you it's 6,500 people or it's 4 rows and so forth, but it depends, because it also goes through. I think that that's something that I hope I did not give you the wrong idea. Circularity is not about being self-sufficient on the smallest possible scale, but it is important that certain things can be solved already at the building level, certain things, street, neighborhood, and so forth. What is important from the social point of view very often is that there needs to be a social relation, so that the groups or the neighborhoods are small enough to collaborate. So
Alex,
then,
I think we have to move on.
Okay.
We
Good.
have 2 more questions, but I would suggest that we move on.
Yeah, good.
Thank you so much, Alex, for imparting your knowledge to us. Alex's presentation will be available on the website soonish, from tomorrow, I guess. But now we have Roman who will comment and tell us a little bit about his views and how this all lands in Ukraine. Roman, the floor is yours. You're muted. Yeah, go on.
Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me and can you see me?
We can hear you, yes.
Yes, thank you so much for allowing me to reflect, and thank you, Alexander, for a fascinating lecture. I am really sorry that after this lecture we are not having another 3 or 4, which would go deeper into certain aspects of the things that you have mentioned, because that would be really beneficial. But I do advise everybody to watch those 3 videos because they were interesting for me, and they even opened something new for me, which was activity-based spatial material flow analysis, because before that we only considered material flow analysis in general, without being specific about the well, about the place and activity that is being done there. Let me briefly reflect on what I heard and how this relates to Ukraine's reconstruction, because we are really short on time, so I will be as specific as possible. First of all, a huge challenge in Ukraine is understanding of the correct, let's say, essence of circularity, because mostly people are mixing this with waste management, and they are not thinking about circular design, holistic systems thinking, and yeah, it's quite a problem. But yeah, we are trying to change that with our projects, and a little bit of recycling, a little bit of circular design, and a little bit of education here in Ukraine. But I wish we could do more, and probably it's a good cooperation right now, where we could disseminate right knowledge and right concepts. I would say I have a few more, but let me move straight to the reconstruction, because I've seen also a lot of very interesting questions in the chat and also in the Q&A, which were focused on debris management, destruction waste, and I think that's partly a reason of the first aspect that I mentioned, that people are focusing on waste management because they see the waste, they see what's on the ground, and they want to do something with it, which is also okay. So I would say our reconstruction has 2 dimensions in terms of circularity, and we should tackle it from both sides. It's not a big secret, and it's widely known that we have millions of this destruction waste, of this debris laying on the ground in more than half of our communities in Ukraine. And we have to do something with that, and the best thing to do is to reuse, to upcycle this into new construction, bringing as much value as possible. I'm happy to say that this has been started already in Ukraine, also by private partners, but also by the government, who have that's a surprise, but they have basically simplified some regulations and have launched an experimental regime for certain types of construction. And in this sense, we can do some things that we couldn't do before, namely using upcycled, recycled materials in the new construction, and increasing its share. So that's a good thing, and we have to tackle this issue definitely, starting with regulation, starting with incentives, fiscal policy, enabling technology. But the main thing is dedication and willingness to do something, because in tackling debris, there is nothing which would be too high-end in terms of innovations or technology. It's just the willingness to do stuff, training for a few weeks, and then you can already follow the steps. But the second very important aspect is circular design and systems thinking when we are trying to restore our whole cities, neighborhoods, when we have to build something from scratch. So that's new buildings, because then is the the biggest impact, and the biggest economical, environmental, and social impact is hidden there, because it will really matter what kind of materials we are choosing, um, what kind of footprint we are designing, whether we require energy generation or not, whether we are applying smart grids and resilient grids and autonomous living or not, uh, how do we deal with the light and yeah, food, and etc., etc. So I would say this idea of urban metabolism, of circularity and material flows that can be applied to every system should be widely promoted and used when we design new neighborhoods, new even cities and new areas. Of course, we are trying to facilitate that, but it's not enough yet, not enough resources and not enough uh, cases to be proud of in Ukraine. But we are on the right track, I think, and with this kind of attention from the European Union, from Western institutions like TU Delft, I think we can do a good job. What I wanted also to say is that Ukraine could also be very important for the circularity of the entire continent, because if we look at the scope 1, 2, 3, especially 3, I am really fascinated that cities like Amsterdam, for instance, are already looking at what kind of impact they are causing by their consumption in the third countries. In this sense, shortening supply chains, facilitating bio-based, the use of bio-based materials in construction. These are the areas where Ukraine can play a crucial role for the European Union, given our huge potential in agri-food industry, bio-based economy in general, and highly skilled workers and high level of chemistry and physics in application. And I'm proud to see quite some circular startups now emerging from Ukraine. So I hope this process can be a two-way and a two win-win for the European Union and for Ukraine. Of course, we need your assistance, your knowledge, and your help to rebuild after the war. But we also can build a common future, sustainable circular future on the continent. I have a few more things, but I think we are a bit short on time, and if there are any questions, I could also take them. But thank you very much for the opportunity to join.
Thank you, Roman. I think we have a few minutes for questions. If people are energetic enough to ask them. So a few questions have been already answered by Alex. Well,
Yeah.
while people are, so thank you so very much, Roman, specifically about your continental outlook, so to speak. Actually, no country or place can be sustainable or circular in isolation, right? We need to think in terms of systems. An anonymous attendee is asking, what types of circular startups have you seen come out of Ukraine?
Whatever types. I mean, starting from, well, we have basically organized 2 circular economy hackathons in 2018 and 2019. So in total, we had about 40 teams presenting their projects. After that, there was a big break because of COVID, first of all. But also we decided that we don't want to do hackathons anymore, because there are plenty of projects who need acceleration and well, basically investment to enter the market and to move on from stage A. But it's all sorts of things, starting from wastewater treatment and machines for automatic waste sorting, and then finishing with, I don't know, bio-based eternal notebooks, bioplastics, coffee granules and flax eyewear, all kinds of bio-based construction material and insulation, bio-based toothbrush, and many more. So, and I'm proud that a lot of them are basically not in waste management, but are replacing the typical products. So they are in circular design, and they are in pre-cycling, what I call it.
I think you are addressing already the question from Natalia Meyerschak. What is easier to implement, circular strategy to already existing objects or on the first state of creation objects? I think you just mentioned that, right?
Well, but it depends on the object, of course. It really depends on the object. But well, typically I would say that creating something from scratch, you have much more freedom and you have much more time to really think about everything and all the flows. Although in an existing object, the problems you are facing are more apparent, and you can like see them happening. When you create an object, you might miss something, and then you will see another problem which is arising, and you will have to fix that one as well. So that really depends on the object.
Thanks, Roman. Before we close the session, I'd like to ask if Alex, do you want to make a final remark or a final statement?
I think I want to kind of first thank you, Roman, for putting this better in context. So and adding to that, I think that's very important. I just want also to say something to the last one, the new or the existing. And I think the more important is the existing. In this sense, as I started, that we're having already so much materials and so much and buildings and building stock and so forth there. And so I think that's the crucial one.
I think Alex, if I may, this partly kind of touches in what Julie Lawson, one of our co-organizers, is asking in the chat. Oh. She's saying 165,000 residential buildings have been destroyed by Russian aggression. Can a circular economy and bio-based material address the scale of need?
No, we both shake. I think. Can I may, and Roman, I'm interested if we would have had a circular economy or a circular built environment and everything is got in place, then maybe. Now for sure not. Now I think it can play a part, but not address it alone. That's, I think, very, very clear.
Yeah, that totally agree. For instance, like if we consider some specific projects where they even upcycle 90 to 95% of what, like the amount of materials that were there, most of that is going to the roads and some structures for concrete. But then we still need so much materials to actually build the thing and insulate it and paint it and well, windows and stuff, etc. So definitely not, but also it's a big question whether we should rebuild everything that has been there before the full-scale invasion, or we should look at where people are moving to and what are the needs in their communities, because it might be that we can build more efficiently and apply design thinking and a human-centered approach in a good sense to build a bit less, but to bring more value.
Thanks a lot. Julie Lawson is drawing our attention to the experience of Warsaw, and she's saying there's a unique exhibition on this now at the Museum of Warsaw, if people want to have a look. I think, Julie, you have the link. Maybe you can share the link. I just want to thank our speakers so very much today. I learned a lot, and I hope you guys have learned as well. I think there are huge questions to be addressed in such a dramatic situation in Ukraine, where so much has been destroyed. Maybe the idea that was expressed here, that not everything needs to be rebuilt where it was, because people are moving and things are changing very quickly, is a very interesting idea. But also the idea that we need to think in terms of big systems and big chains of consumption and so on. I want to apologize because we absolutely don't like the webinar format. We are more used to open Zooms, but we were advised by TU Delft that this is an activity that is prone to be hacked by Russian hackers. So they asked us to do it in this format of a webinar where the interaction between us and the audience is not so easy, I have to say. But there is a reason for that. We were really told by TU Delft to use this format. I want to announce our next lecture on June the 5th. It's also at 6 o'clock Amsterdam time. And it's also about the circular built environment. It's super local toward the circular built environment by John van Oorschot and Nurhan Aboujidi from the Center of Smart Urban Redesign Research Center. Smart Urban Redesign Research Center at Zoud University. I hope you will all be there. And I, again, thank you so much to the panelists today for your contribution. And well, good evening, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks. There is no applause, I'm afraid, but please imagine an applause. Thank you. Bye-bye.